Hey, welcome back to Emerald City Comicon Day 2. Yes, Day 2.
Day 2.
My name is Mike Avila, and I'm with SYFY WIRE, as is my co-host here, Jackie Jennings.
Yeah, I'm Jackie Jennings, and I also co-host the Deadly Class podcast for Sci-Fi, so...
Which is such a coincidence because we have the co-creator of Deadly Class comic here with us, Wes Craig.
Hello. Thank you.
How you doing, Wes?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. It's like 10 times more talking than I do in any average day, just sitting in my little office doing the drawings all day just by myself, yelling at my dog instead of like shaking hands and saying hi to people all day. So it's a very different, very big contrast, but it's nice to kind of get that face-to-face interaction with the fans, you know?
Gives your dog a break, you know?
Yes, exactly, yeah. Finally.
We have good news. We're not only going to ask you to talk even more, but we're going to ask you to talk and draw at the same time, because
it's easy. I do it all. I can juggle at the same time.
These folks are here to see some artistry on the stage live, because we're doing it.
Because we're doing it live. I edited myself. But.
Thank goodness, thank goodness. Okay, Wes, what do you want to draw for us today?
I'm gonna draw Marcus, the main character of Deadly Class. You may have heard of him. Yeah, so I'm gonna do that. Shall I go over?
Yeah.
Do my thing?
Start it off.
Well,
all right.
Pepper you with questions as you
go. Sure.
Yeah, and one of the first questions we'll ask you is for the art students out there who will be watching this, or out here in the audience, who want to know what Wes Craig uses to draw, mainly.
I use, I keep feeling like I should shout, and I keep forgetting that I have a microphone on, so I can just like relax. No, I use, what is it? It's a Pigma Micron chiseled edge one that a lot of people don't use, actually. A lot of people use the brushes and stuff like that, but I find it holds its point really well, and it's easy to get these kind of choppy little lines that I like to do. So it kind of, most people say like, you know, like what are the materials you use, and you're like, it doesn't matter if it's this or that, it's more like what you put into the art, but it does actually kind of inform the way that I draw the comic quite a bit, you know, because it's kind of lends itself to that choppy, Mike Mignola, Hellboyish kind of a graphic black and white style, you know? Something similar to this. That's why I chose this, actually. It's got a chiseled edge on the point, so I can kind of imitate that style.
Now, obviously, this is a slightly different working environment than you're used to. You know, usually you're in a nice, quiet little room you're with your dog over there as your audience, right? Your sounding board. Do you usually start off with light pencil sketch, or do you go right to the marker like this? This is a pretty bold move here.
It is. I've been drawing Saya and Maria all day, just straight, like no pencils or anything. And certain characters those are the only 3 characters that I can do that for, probably, because I'm so used to, I've just drawn panel after panel after panel. I'm very used to the shapes and everything. Like, I've got that figured out, you know? Everything else I would usually pencil. At home, I'm very precise about it, but at conventions, I feel like I can be a little bit more free, and if it doesn't turn out perfect, then it's okay, you know?
Whoa.
Don't hurt yourself, Jackie.
I know, I almost fell right off the chair. So one of my favorite parts about the show is that there are individual shots that look like they're pulled, and they're framed and directed to look exactly like images from the comic. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Were you involved in that at all? Like, was that a conversation that you were at all having with directors or Rick or anyone who was like on set making it, or is it something they pulled on their own?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the animation, there was a lot of talk back and forth with me and Titmouse, who handled like most of the animation for the series.
The
and,
flashbacks,
like the flashbacks, yeah. And Polyester, that's based in Toronto, did the Las Vegas animation. So for that one specifically, the Las Vegas episode, I did a lot of work with Adam Kane, the director of that episode. We like Skyped and talked back and forth, and he would kind of, this is how I see it. The camera's kind of coming around this way, and I would do storyboards for that, stuff like that. So I got more directly involved on that Las Vegas episode, and kind of just giving ideas to Titmouse for some things needed to be more simplified. And you know, they're trying to imitate the style of certain flashbacks I had in the comic book, but it's hard. If it's very detail oriented, it's hard to imitate that style and make it animated without like just driving themselves crazy, So
Yeah.
it's like, I was like, maybe you can simplify it more, it's okay, and stuff like that. Try to boss them around.
So you were
be
sort
a
of
jerk.
absolving, like it's
Yes.
okay, it's okay.
Yeah, it's true. That's what we would want to hear, I imagine. Being an animator, it's very labor intensive. So somebody coming over and being like, it can be more easy, more simple than that is probably like a good thing to hear. Yeah, I hope.
As somebody who helped create this world, has there been a pinch me moment so far on the show that you've stopped and you said, "Whoa, that was amazing! I couldn't believe they brought that to life on screen"?
Generally, like just the character Chester, the fact that he's like a real character out in the world.
It's insane. Yeah.
It's crazy. And what else? I don't know. There's a few things. I always feel if I could talk about one thing, I'm to the detriment of the other amazing things that are going on in the show. But I mean, seeing Benjamin play Marcus, it's like everything about him in terms of how he looks, how he acts, everything. It's like that Marcus jumped out of my head and became like a real person, and he inhabits that role. And even just talking with him, when the cameras aren't rolling, just him himself, he kind of has a lot of that Marcus character in him, So he's able to. He's able to bring that easily to that character. So that's a trip. And seeing like Shabnam, seeing that character come to life is like, I root for him a lot actually. And if you've read the comic or not, you kind of know where that character's going, but no spoilers or anything. But it's like, he's like one of my favorite characters. I'm always rooting for him to kind of like, it's tough for him, man. It's tough for him to survive in that school.
Yeah, he's a great character.
Yeah.
Did you because the actors, in addition to being really great actors, they do they even kind of like physically capture a lot of what was drawn. So did you have any say, any hand or input in casting? Like, were you involved? Yeah, just in that process at all?
Yeah, I saw a little bit of the, like, Rick would share certain things with me about, like, what do you think about this person, that person. Not every, my main job is to kind of keep the comic book rolling. It's a labor-intensive thing to get it out every month. So I was kind of like, Rick's doing his thing for the show, but we'd get on the phone, talk about it, stuff like that. And so I had certain opinions about certain actors that maybe weren't quite what we were looking for, stuff like that. But and then once you find the right characters, or the right actors, you're like, oh, please. Then you're just praying that works out, in terms of their schedule and all those things,
Cool.
Yeah.
What about the music? Have you and Rick talked about the music selection a lot? Because obviously it's a big thing with the show.
Yeah, because I mean I didn't talk to him so much in terms of the show, but it was like we talked about it a ton for the comic book, and I knew that whatever we had talked about for the comic book, that's the world, that's what he wanted to bring to the show. So yeah, we have a lot of like a 1 or 2 year age difference or whatever, but basically he grew up in the like Phoenix, I believe, in the States, and I grew up in Montreal, but we both were in the punk scene when we were kids, and I was more like a rockabilly punk kid, and he was like a skater punk or whatever, but it's a lot of crossover between those two things. So we were speaking like the same language. When he called me up, told me about the series, I was like, I knew what he was going for, knew what he was talking about, so
But music-wise, you were more connected to the 90s music scene than the 80s music scene, right?
Yeah, I was like, it's like when I got into like grade 8 or 9 or whatever is when Nevermind came out, and so I was kind of like, that was my whole thing. That was just like, that changed my world, and probably when he was it's just when you're that young, I guess 2 years difference is a big difference. And he heard Black Flag and Bad Religion and stuff like that, and that was his kind of come to Jesus moment, But it's all kind of comes from the same place though, really.
Hair for some artists is really, really troublesome. How do you feel about hair, Wes?
Hair, man, it's the worst. I give too much hair to all these characters, and they all have black hair that's got to have some light on the top and stuff. So yeah, it's annoying. But you got to do it right.
You design the characters. Yeah. You annoy yourself.
Don't blame your dog.
I only have myself to blame. It's true.
Did you, as you're watching the show now, is there anything that is happening or a way an episode is written or an actor is portraying a character that is impacting what you guys are doing? Like, are you watching it and thinking, oh, yeah, actually, that is a character trait of Petra that never thought about. Or,
Yeah. I kind of wanted originally, before the show was an actual thing, I was like, I don't generally like when I see a movie or this or that and the design of that movie influences the comic book too much. So I was kind of like, I just want the comic book to be its own thing and not be too influenced. But no, that didn't work because you can't help it. You see things that are super cool in the TV show, and you're like, it's gonna make its way into the comic book, you know? Like specifically the school, the way that the school itself is imagined in the TV show is just. It's so much more three-dimensional than I made it. I made it like in the comic book, it's more like the high school that I went to when I was a kid, which is just generic and kind of boring looking, and the school in the show is just kind of...
Difference in approaching the art in an action book like this as opposed to a superhero book where you have the luxury of having these crazy characters with no relation to reality and physics a lot of times. I mean, you know, for Marvel, you did work on like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I imagine you approach this book much differently than you did that because the dynamics are different in what you're portraying.
Yeah, for sure. At the end of the day, it's a real world. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, nobody has superpowers. Saya, once in a while I cheat and I'll have her doing something that's not physically, like no one can. She's so good that it's like she's able to pull off some stuff. I have her like running across a string one time in the comic book, which is from like an old Daredevil Frank Miller comic book that I thought it was cool, so I copied it, you know? But generally it's a real world, and when people, you know, when violence happens, if somebody gets punched, I'm not thinking like they just kind of get up. It's like, well, now that person might have a concussion, that other person's hand might be broken. You know, you got to think about the actual real life consequences of the violence that happens. So yeah, that's kind of a different thing. And then once in a while, like somebody in the comic does heavy drugs and I'm able to kind of do a thing where, oh, now they're flying, now they're whatever. You know, we kind of, like Rick gives me these opportunities to kind of use my imagination, go a little bit crazy, and then just kind of work those muscles and then work our way back to the real world of the school, you know?
Yeah, I want it. So those in the show and in the comics, those, and I think this is true of like actors, performers, that bringing intoxication or being any kind of altered state is incredibly hard to do in a way that feels authentic and not in a way that feels like it's mimicking the other ways we feel like we've seen intoxication portrayed, if that makes sense. Like, so yeah, like for that Las Vegas episode, can you just like, what was the, you mentioned that you like worked with some of the animators. Like, were there references that you were pulling? Was there stuff that you were avoiding? Like, don't do that. That's a cliche. That's a trope of like that kind of like the trip sequence. You know, like.
Yeah, I guess we just wanted to go as crazy as we could for that episode because there's certain parts. Obviously, somebody on heavy drugs isn't gonna hallucinate the way that the animation goes, where it's literally they're like flying in the sky and they're all CGI computer animated. Like it's completely over the top, you know? But then there's a lot of other stuff, like Marcus sitting in the room with Billy when they're just about to go see Billy's dad and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The more subtle things where somebody talks and then there's an echo, like after the talk, and then somebody moves very slowly, but you see like the trail behind him. All those little things were more very convincing to me. When I saw it, I was like, by the end of the episode, you feel like you were on a little bit of drugs, basically. You know. So I think that was the idea, and that was when we did that in the comic book. I wanted to do the same kind of thing, as just kind of just play around with that stuff. You know, it's a very, you know, it's a hallucinogenic, so it's a very visual thing. So it kind of lends itself to comic books and TV or movies or whatever, where you can kind of go a little bit crazy with it. Yeah.
Right. So you're slowly working your way down the neck here. Let's give people an update on the thing you're doing on the side while you're not answering questions for us. We take it for granted how easy somebody like Wes makes it look. He's saying, oh, by the way,
I can't do.
Find Marcus when we stop and talks and answers questions.
If someone interrupts me while I'm like chopping a vegetable, I'm like, now I have to start over. I don't know where I was. I mean, who carrot?
It's a lot of it's just working on the characters every day. You get very, very familiar with them, you know. I do all day. There's like the hardcover of the book, the first volume, and I'll do like a quick sketch in it for fans. It's $50. It weighs a ton. they have to lug it to the convention. So I was like, so I'll do a quick like SYFY sketch in there. I've been doing those all day though, so that's why I'm doing Marcus right now. I can do that one like with my eyes closed at this point, but just because I've done it like so many times. But you know, you're an artist, you do one thing all day, so you want to do the other thing. So I was like, yeah, today, now for this, I'll do
Well, I'm sure the
Marcus.
fans appreciate it.
Yeah.
Buying a big collection like that, and you get something personal like a sketch, makes it even better.
Yeah.
How much practice did it take for you to get to that point where you could draw a nice sketch like that with your quote-unquote eyes closed?
Just recently, honestly, like maybe like the past maybe year and a half or so, I do that SYFY sketch now, and it's like my signature where I just kind of, it's always the same shot. It's a side profile shot of her, and I don't know. I was at a convention, I think, and I was kind of like penciling it out, and I just realized like I don't need to do this anymore. Like I know exactly where the lines are all gonna go. I just kind of need to kind of like yeah. There's just a certain thing to it. She has this pouty lip thing, and there's like a cigarette sticking out, and there's smoke. And there's just like the same thing each time, and it's kind of like yeah. I just realized I was just doing too many steps for no reason. I could cut that one out just for this one drawing, basically.
I feel like the quick convention sketch is like an artist's signature.
Yeah, totally.
If you're a professional artist, you need to figure out how to do a certain character in a few short steps, and have a unique signature.
Always got it.
Because it's what fans are going to ask you for a lot.
Okay.
Hello. Because you know, especially with a popular book like Deadly Class,
Yeah.
you're going to sell your trades and your hardcovers, and they're going to come and they're going to say, "Hey, can I get a sketch?"
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and one, you're probably too busy to do commissions now, I would imagine.
I do a few, but yeah, it's kind of like, it's really hard to get them done. I have to go and disappear somewhere else to get them done because there's people come over with books, so I get 2 lines done and then I sign a few books, then 2 more lines. It's a little bit kind of hard to get into a rhythm, you know? Yeah, for sure. That's true though, actually. Like I know Neil Adams, he's like a famous artist that worked a little bit for Marvel, a lot for DC, very famous for his interpretation of Batman in the late 70s, and I've seen him do it. That was kind of maybe the inspiration for the SYFY thing, is that he can do a Batman, same thing, like his signature. He just knows how to do this certain Neil Adams interpretation of the character. So yeah, I'm sure that I saw that, and that kind of worked its way into my brain over the years, and I was like, maybe I could do that eventually.
The smart Batman artists know how to do a very quick Batman sketch. Jim Lee does another one. They could do it in like about 5 seconds.
Yeah, because he's such an iconic guy. As long as you get the ears right, you know who it is. You know what I mean?
And you know what the secret is? No hair.
No hair.
Oh,
Unlike-
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just draw a little shiny thing there on the top, and you're done. You're set.
Is there a reason why Saya is your go-to?
I just know it's one of those things. Marcus is the main character of the series, but he's kind of an everyman type of character. So
Yeah.
when we created him, it was one of those things. It's like he's like a white T-shirt, blue jeans kind of guy. Nothing super specific about him. He's got his scars and everything. Like when you look more closely at him, there's things like that. But from a distance, he just looks like an average kid. And Saya and Maria are the ones that really visually kind of like from across the convention floor. It's like, at conventions we have our banners and stuff to call it, to be like, hey, I'm over here if you're looking for me. And it's always been Saya or Maria, because it's kind of like those are the ones that you can see from across the room and you go, oh, what's the deal with that girl with the crazy tattoos and stuff? And that'll bring people over. And it works that way in a comic shop and on a TV show too, is that those visuals of her with her blade and everything like that kind of like entices you to watch, and then you get into Marcus's story. Marcus is more of a character that you need to know who he is and actually get into who he is, like inside his head, to really kind of get into to be fascinated by him.
Have you been doing Maria, Day of the Dead Maria? Is that
Yeah.
super complicated?
Yeah, it's complicated in a way, but those black lines kind of, just like a superhero mask, you can use those lines to kind of inform the structure of the face and stuff. Like I do the black spots first, and then that kind of lets me know where the eyes are going to be. There's these little tricks or whatever, so it actually
it's like
kinda
he's trying to make it hard for himself.
Saya is a bit of a pain in the butt to draw, though, because you got to draw those tattoos every time, and it's just like, oh man, why do I don't want to, it burns your
your
mouth
fault.
for a while.
Again, you design the characters.
I know. I think I can blame Rick for that one. No, I can blame our editor Sebastian Gierner and Rick, because they thought it would be really cool to have a Yakuza member in the school that's just like all tatted up.
Yeah, I mean, mean, it is cool. They're not wrong.
Yeah.
Rick has always praised your ability to design characters. How many different iterations of these characters did you go through before you settled on the designs that you felt were just right for them? And then you and Rick and the editor and whoever talked about it.
Yeah, I think it didn't take a lot of passes. I think Marcus took a little bit of time. Maria was like right off the bat. We were looking at some images of like Day of the Dead, like women dressed up in that makeup, and Rick was like, it'd be cool if we had a character that looked like that, and we kind of knew already what that would be. And Saya took a few passes in terms of like hairstyle. Like I had a bunch of different hairstyles at first, and it settled into this kind of crazy mop that she has in the comic book. In the TV series, it's a bit more kind of taking like styled, you know. Yeah, those were figured out relatively quickly, but it took time also over the course of maybe the first story arc to really figure out who they were. Because I look back at the first issues, and it's like seeing the pilot episode of a TV show. Sometimes the actors don't, you know, it's like it takes you a while to really figure out who the character is and who the character isn't. So it's the same thing with the drawings. Like the first few issues, Marcus is like really skinny and like way taller than he ends up being. Like I kind of made him shorter and shorter. I'm like, he's a kid, and I was so used to drawing superheroes and stuff that I drew everybody a bit too adult, and I had to took a while to make me realize that they're really young. So there's, at that age, a lot of people have massive like height differences. Everyone's all over the map, you know. So it was me getting more and more comfortable with what they look like and what they don't look like. Yeah.
Yeah, there are, I mean, obviously some of this is just casting, but there are a couple actors. I feel like the most notable change from the comics is probably Benedict Wong as
sure.
Master Lin.
Yeah.
So I assume that was just a kind of creative TV. Benedict is an amazing choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And an easy choice to make.
So easy.
Yeah. No, he was kind of like, you don't get him to be interested in the role and go like, yeah, but he doesn't look close enough to the guy that I drew in the comic book, so like pass, you know? It's like I was a big fan of Marco Polo. You know, so yeah, and he's got the gravitas, you know? He's got that kind of thing where you're like, everything he says is like real serious, you know?
Yeah,
So he's great at that.
Heartfelt and terrifying. And
Yeah, he fits that role perfectly, whether he looks exactly like the... And I was thinking about that about all of the cast, really, is I was like, most importantly, you got to get people that really have the acting chops to pull off the role, and if they don't look exactly like how I drew them in the comic book, that's okay. It just happens that they also do look like the characters from the comic book, luckily. But yeah, when we got him, that was an example of kind of like his personality and what he brings is the same thing as the character we have in the comic book. They just don't look visually exactly like the same, you know?
Yeah.
Those are the kind of moves that make a difference with comic book adaptations, taking them to TV or film, right? I feel like we've reached a point now where people are okay with taking some major detours from the source material.
Yeah.
Because as a comics fan, I don't really want to see the exact adaptation of the book. For that, I'll read the book, because the comic will always be better in that regard. Because Wes Craig, the artist, has an unlimited budget to create whatever he wants to do.
For sure, exactly.
Whereas Hollywood, despite the magic of CGI, doesn't, right?
Yeah.
And those kind of moves, you see in some of the movies, some of the Marvel movies, for example, have made some major changes and departures from the source comics, and it's paid off in Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
The Ancient One.
Yeah.
It's a great example.
Yeah, for sure.
Matilda.
For sure. Yeah,
You know,
it's true. It's true. I don't think everything's got to... I think to be slavish to the source material is not... There's just this happy medium where it's like you want to respect the source material, but every comic books have their thing that work really well, and TV and movies have their thing that work really well, and you got to play to your own strengths. You know, you can't just be like imitating everything from whether it be a novel or a comic book or whatever. And also, like, these are all characters that only exist in our heads, and when they become actual actors that are inhabiting the role, certain people are gonna shine, certain people aren't gonna shine, certain people... There's like Victor is kind of a different character because
And that's,
there's just a likability of the actor and stuff like that, whereas he's just a really not likable character in the comic book, but now he's played a little bit differently, you know? So it's kind of like you can't see that in real life and go, no, don't do it that way. It's like you got to see that person's bringing something else to the role and let them do that, you know?
Yeah. I feel like Victor, this is my favorite relationship in the show, Victor and Petra.
Yeah.
There is, like you're saying, there's a difference in the way they're played, but it feels like the part that's being pulled, the essential core of it, is this tragedy of their attraction or relationship that is sort of, it is a little bit of like a star-crossed doomed to fail, but it feels like if you're pulling that intention and spirit, it's like, okay, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Like, we'll let Victor be funny.
So you're
comedic
team
relief.
Petra Victor.
What?
You're team Petra Victor?
I am team Petra Victor so hard, and I know that's damage and says something.
What about Billy?
What about Billy?
What about
You know,
poor
Billy,
Lex?
get in there, man. I don't know. You got to take control of the situation. I guess he does, but
It's true. He's got some issues to work.
You
on.
can't be on anything. You can't play favorites
That's
with your
true.
kids. These characters are your
I
kids.
can.
You can.
I'm a fan.
Be a good parent.
Yeah.
You love all your children the
I love
same.
Billy.
Yes,
I
that's
love
true.
Billy.
That's true. I would just want them to all get over their issues and just kind of, live together in a commune eventually. One day, we'll see.
I think that's where, that
A
seems like
nice commune where they're not trying to kill each other.
not one of those deadly communes.
Not the deadly communes, no.
I can see that. Yeah. You could go there. So you're not team Victor Petra. I'm just gonna keep pushing this.
Yeah, I'm team Petra Billy, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
see.
I mean-
But also,
We know there's.
I can't go into that without getting all spoilery.
I know,
of
I
the
know.
future. If you've read the comic, it's a different thing than watching the TV. Not a different thing, but you're
Yeah.
more informed of where things go in the comic book.
But
And
maybe
I'm like,
the
I have to
creative-
just shut up right now to not talk about any of
Yes,
this
yes,
stuff.
yes, yes.
Here's something you can answer. Talk about some of the spirits and the influences that informed Deadly Class. You mentioned Daredevil and Frank Miller's work on it. You could definitely see that influence in the comic. Because, I mean, if you have anything to do with assassins and really cool action scenes, you
Yeah.
can always trace it back to Frank Miller and Daredevil.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's like probably the biggest influence. I always look at Elektra Lives Again by Frank Miller as a big influence. But he did this book called Ronin, Dark Knight Returns, and Batman Year One. All that stuff is, and David Mazzucchelli, who drew Batman Year One, that's like a huge influence. His work with Frank Miller and his solo work as more of an indie artist in the 80s and 90s. And I've got a ton of influences, but for Deadly Class, I wanted to get into the influences that I have from the 80s, kind of just stick to that, kind of tighten my vision on just what are those things that really you saw when you were a kid and they blew your mind, and what maybe you got into later also, but they're from the 80s, so it's like I didn't get into the Jaime, like Hernandez Brothers, Love and Rockets until later, but that's kind of like that's the thing that's closest to Deadly Class in a certain way, because it's like Latino punk culture in California, which is it's not the same, but it's kind of like that. Those clubs are the same, and those mosh pits are the same, and all that kind of stuff, Yeah, Frank Miller, Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira when I was a kid blew my mind, and that's kind of works its way in here and there, especially
Manga
with
or the
like-
anime?
Both, actually, both. Yeah, I mean, it was the anime at first. That's the first thing I think that was the first thing I discovered. But I might have actually been aware of the comic book too.
I bet a lot of people in the States found Akira first through the animated
Yeah,
film.
for sure.
And
But
then
there were English reprints that were getting like recolored by Steve Oliff that were really cool and stuff like that. And they were kind of they were trying to appeal more to an American audience. I think I may
deep
have
nerd
found
cut
that
right
first.
there.
It is.
That's deep nerd cut. Very impressive.
I hope I'm getting that name right. I might
You
be
did,
kind of
you
like
did.
off, but yeah. So that was a big influence, and Ghost in the Shell, both of those things, and Lone Wolf and Cub on the manga side of things, and on the American side of things, it was a lot of Frank Miller, John Byrne on Superman and Fantastic Four, and like George Perez on Teen Titans was like the first thing that got me into comic books. So it doesn't directly work its way into the work that I do, but it's all kind of it's all in there, I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff, but yeah, that's all I got right now on the influence
That's a great
side.
list.
Yeah.
Where are we at with the drawing here? Give us a progress report.
It's choppy and dirty, but I mean, it's kind of like everything's there, basically. Now I'm just thinking of like doing other things like sticking a cigarette in his mouth or whatever, and I'm like, but then you got to know when to like stop the drawing and stop. I could do some background stuff to kind of, but he's pretty much all there, you know.
This is the part of these live art drawings where the artist will say something very weighty and say, the picture will tell you when it's done. Which means that they're running out of time.
Telling me it's
They've
done.
looked at the clock,
Yes.
they know they're running out of time.
Yeah, really.
Sure.
So the picture is telling me that it's done, it's finished.
Gonna do some San Diego.
Thank you for the courtesy chuckle, I appreciate that.
Some San Diego misty fog stuff, and then we'll call it.
Oh, beautiful.
Thanks.
Just one question that's purely for my own satisfaction.
Yeah.
In the animation of it's Lynn's backstory. His father, Master Lynn's father in the show,
Yeah.
it looked to me like a nod to the Lynn that you drew in the comics. Was that?
That wasn't
Me-
my.
No?
Is that what is that without my idea or?
Yeah, or was that like an intentional kind of nod to?
I'm sure it was. I think
Yeah.
it was more on Rick's side of things actually, because I wasn't really as involved with the animation at that stage.
Okay.
I did more work actually. I think, or did I? Now I'm blanking. But I did more work with actually what.
Or did I?
Yeah.
I did some of the character work in that one, but that was actually at a certain stage of completion where I was like, oh, this one's looking really good, and they got this one figured out. I think it was, but yeah, I think that they had, this is an opportunity to kind of show this character kind of a little, a wink and nod to the comic book readers, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh yeah, it's some good fog.
This is when we know we're getting to the end too, because he brings out the thick black marker to fill in the line for dramatic effect,
Yes,
correct?
exactly.
Is there one character that is particularly challenging even now? Who, I mean, you kind of mentioned the tattoos and the Day of the Dead face paint, but
Yeah.
is there someone who you're like, "Whew, still tough"? Not tough.
Castro was a tough guy to draw, but he was a lot of
Yeah.
fun because he drew on some crazy influences for me, like Raising Arizona, like the bad guy character that's on the motorcycle from Raising
Yep.
Arizona, and like Adamant, and just the craziest 80s fashion that I could possibly think of,
Yeah.
mixed with this, Leatherface looking dude. But who else?
It is crazy.
They've all become kind of pretty second nature. I've been
Yeah.
drawing them for a while now, I love drawing Master Lin because in the comic book he doesn't look, he's very small and very old and craggy. That's the difference between the TV show
Yeah.
and the comic book. So all of the rest of the cast, they're all young and fresh face. I can't draw any lines on their faces, or else that adds, like, as a comic book artist, that's like one of those things. Every line you adds like an extra 10 years to the character, so you have to kind of keep them very clean. But so just for a change, I get to draw Master Lin, and he's always just like just a jumble of wrinkles,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I have fun doing that. But yeah, they're all pretty. I wish I had a better answer than that, but yeah, no, they all come pretty easily. The hair, too much hair.
There is a lot of
They all
hair.
have to get lice in. Oh, they all get lice, and
Yeah.
I shave all their heads, and then I don't have to
A
draw
lice
hair
outbreak
anymore.
at King's Dominion, yeah.
I'm gonna bring that up to Rick.
When
Like,
that
mention it as a plot.
when that issue hits the comic shops, you know that he was up against it with the deadline, and he just
Yeah.
had to do something drastic.
Shave their heads.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I don't care whether Rick likes it or not. I'm doing it.
It's a diversion from murder and death.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a lice outbreak.
You have to deal with other things. It's not always.
Yeah,
it's not
death
always
of lice.
assassin stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's lice. Class.
Assassinating an infestation.
You know what, Jackie? I don't want to
No.
put any pressure on him or anything, but there's about 30 seconds left on that clock.
I'm done.
Oh,
It's
now
all
you're
good.
done.
Yeah.
Except
Yeah,
wait, you have to do one thing.
Ta-da! Yeah, I
Yeah.
gotta sign
Most
it.
important part.
Sure.
Got a sign.
Thanks.
Hold the applause. He hasn't signed it yet. Hold the applause. He hasn't signed
Yeah,
it
he
Yeah, I
could
might mess it up.
yet. And then he'll have to start all over.
Yeah. Oh, Wes is with a Z.
You're messing with me.
Wes Craig, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
That is awesome. Look at that.
Thank you.
Wes, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah,
here.
no problem.
It's been a lot of fun.
All right.
Hey, we got to remember to tell everybody about tomorrow. You go.
We're here tomorrow. Who knew? Check us out. We'll be live streaming here. We're live streaming a bunch of panels. Follow along #ECCC
And hashtag,
and hashtag
it's a fan thing.
Fan thing. Thanks.